hello. Welcome back to the Feel Good Factor. I'm Susmita Veganosaurus, and I'm so glad you could join me here today. Today I have Laura Powers on my podcast. So I discovered Laura when I was listening to one of Alison Melody's podcasts, and oh, I was so impressed with what she had to say that I went and then started listening to her podcast and then got her book and everything. So Laura is a psychic. She's an entrepreneur, podcaster, speaker, writer, so many things. Since we are in the middle of the coronavirus crisis right now, I thought we could discuss Laura's point of view of the whole thing. Considering that she's a medium and a psychic, I want to know what her thoughts are on this whole thing. Hey Laura, welcome to the Feel Good Factor.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I love your energy and even the name of your show and the topic. It's wonderful. So I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. Hey, I'm in the middle of reading your book about angels and manifestation, and it's really, really good. And what I like about your book particularly is that you've made things very, very simple. So anybody can pick up the book and follow the steps, and it's all about the content and understanding the content, which almost anyone will be able to do. And I really, really appreciate it. So, Laura, how many books have you written?
So I've written 7 books and I'm actually working on a couple other books. So all of those books are on the sort of psychic spiritual realm. And then we'll be releasing another book this year. That's my first book on podcasting because podcasting has really changed my life. I'm a huge advocate of podcasting. And they have another book that I'm finishing up that's on my work with animals. So I also do work as an animal medium and animal communicator. So that book will also be coming out.
Wow, that's a lot of books. How long does it take you to write each book?
Well, the writing process is actually fairly fast. Depends on the kind of book. The podcasting book is obviously more research because I'm citing technical things. But my psychic books, some have a little bit of research, but a lot of it is channeled. So the writing portion comes quickly. And I think the part that's the most work for me anyway is the editing and then the packaging and the marketing of the book. So that's a lot of work. Even if you write quickly, I would say it's funny. A lot of people that haven't written or published a book yet. And you think, oh, the writing's the hard part. I've written the book and it's like, okay, now you're like 10% done.
Yeah, it's like podcasting, right? With the recording, we think that's the hard part, but it's actually recording is the easiest. The later when you edit and post and share and everything, that takes so much of work.
Exactly. That post-production stuff is so much, but it's also really what makes everything so solid and important. So yeah.
Absolutely. So Laura, tell me a bit about your background. You said you're a psychic. So is this something you knew you were from when you were a child, or is it something you picked up as you grew up?
Sure. So ever since I was little, I think I knew I was different. I could see things and sense things that other people didn't. And I remember asking my mom when I was probably about 7 years old if she saw things. And I knew based on her response that she just didn't know what I was talking about. Because for me, I'm very clairvoyant. That means I see a lot. So I was like the kid in The Sixth Sense. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but basically I saw ghosts as if they were live people. Like they looked solid to me a lot of times.
Wow.
And I would think they were a live person until they do something that a live person wouldn't do, like walk through a door or disappear or whatever. And so I really thought I was crazy for a long time since other people weren't seeing this. And I kept it to myself for many, many years. And then fast forward as I was really moving into adulthood and it just got stronger and stronger. I really couldn't deny it. And I finally had an experience where a family friend described a ghost that I'd seen but never told anyone about. And this was very affirming for me because even though it was kind of scary at the time, it also meant that I wasn't crazy. And that was a turning point. And it's when I started to do a little bit of research and start to try to understand this world, but I was still pretty scared. So I did block it out for many years. And then I had this kind of spiritual awakening several years later where I realized I really needed to face everything and learn about it. And eventually this became what I did for work, which was not what I thought I was going to do. My previous career was in politics and government. So you don't get much farther away from that than being a psychic.
I mean, I can imagine it is a scary thing. And Is it scary because they can be scary on the other side, or is it scary because of our own fear of the unknown?
Yeah, I think there are certainly some things that are, I would say, not nice or unpleasant. So, for example, I think of ghosts as, people without a body. That's really, when you get right down to it, that's what they are. And there are nice people, not nice people, right? So, just like humanity, there's a range. But what I needed to learn and what I didn't know how to do was just how to have boundaries. So just like in life, you can say, I want to connect with that. I don't want to connect with that. I choose to go be in a safe neighborhood. And, we have a certain amount of control over what we let into our lives through the choices that we make.
Hmm.
And so what I needed to do was learn how to make those changes in my life spiritually, so that what I was connecting with were beings of light and positive energy instead of a lot of the stuff that was, dark and intense. And, these kind of beings, ghosts and some of these other energy beings, I think of this as very much like a garden in terms of how we interact. We get a patch of land, and if you do, immediately what shows up are weeds. You have to learn how to clear it out, and then you have, vegetables and fruits and flowers. And so basically what I needed to do was learn how to cultivate what was, around me, what I allowed into my life spiritually as well as physically.
Okay, that's beautiful. And see, again, your unique talent to really simplify the whole thing. You're talking about weeds and gardening, and anyone will be able to understand it on those terms, right?
Thank you. Yeah, that is my goal. And I will say a lot of the analogies that I've been given by angels. And, whenever they share them with me, I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. It's not anything I would have thought of. But they're very good at doing that for people.
Hey, I wanted to know. So when I was chatting with Christy Rich for her interview, and then we were discussing this, right? And because her name is Christy Rich, and then we were talking about abundance and everything, and that's when I
Yeah.
brought this up. I'm like, Laura Powers, like you actually have all these powers. So is that actually your name, or is that something you adapted later?
It's both actually. So I was born with my father's last name,
Mm-hmm.
and my mother left my father when I was young, and she didn't have his last name. So I always felt very strange having that name. And then I got married, and just because I didn't want my father's name anymore, I took my husband's name.
Okay.
And then my marriage fell apart, and I didn't want my husband's name anymore for many reasons. And it just didn't feel right to go back to my, father's name that I'd had growing up. And I decided to go to a family name on my mother's side. And Laura Powers is my great grandmother, and
Ah,
she's the woman I was named after.
okay.
So when I decided on that name, it felt like that was meant to be my name. It just is amazing how it was suddenly like, this is my name. Like, it just felt right. Whereas my other names had never felt right to me. And then it was really interesting because when I was working on my second book, which is about angels, so you're reading one of that came later that's also about angels, but about manifesting. But my second book is about angels and how they communicate with us.
Mm.
And I was researching angelology, which is the study of angels and the hierarchy of angels. And I learned that there is an order of angels called the Powers Angels.
Oh, wow.
And it was so amazing because I realized that much of what the Powers Angels is what I do for my work. And it was just this wild thing. So I think our names, no matter how we come by them, there's no accident. And I really do feel like spiritually that this is my name.
That's amazing.
hmm
You spoke about your great grandmother. Do you know if anyone in your family before you also had these psychic abilities?
Absolutely. No, it definitely runs in the family. I will say that I think it's very strong with me. So
Mm-hmm.
my whole family, especially the women in my family, are very psychic. And I do believe that I got it from my father's side, although I don't have contact with him anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is with me is I'm very clairvoyant, which means I see. And I think a lot of my family members have an inner knowing. They just know things, maybe not as much on the visual, but even with, say, my mom and my sister and my grandmother, they have had things that certainly would be clairvoyant. Like during World War II, my grandparents were stationed in England, and there was a ghost in the house, and my grandmother did see and was aware of him. And there's been several incidences that I'm aware of with my sister and my mom where they have sensed things. And we definitely have a psychic bond or connection. Like we will know what each other's thinking at times. And we have what I call sometimes kind of psychic text messaging where we can just message simple things back and forth to each other without a phone,
Ah, cool.
which is very handy.
this makes so much sense because sometimes when you share a deep bond with, say, a really close friend or a family member or someone you've newly fallen in love with, there is a certain connection there, a deeper connection. And then you know exactly what each other is thinking. While growing up with my best friend and me, both of us, we had landlines at home back then, and we each had two landlines in the house. And so often I would call her on one line, and then at the same time, the other phone would be ringing, and she would be calling me on the other line. Like we
Yes.
would have thought of each other this exact same time. So, if you hone these abilities, and if you allow your intuition to come through more and more, then this makes sense what you're saying, like, psychic text messaging to each other. That is so cool.
Yeah.
Do you believe, I mean, this is something I think is going to happen as the whole earth's spiritual energy rises and as everybody becomes more and more conscious? I do believe this is the way humans are headed in the future, where we are able to communicate with each other through our minds.
Yes, I do believe that. And by the way, just because you said that story, this happened with my sister many times where we would call each other at such the exact same moment that we'd both get a busy signal. So yes, this is something that can very much happen. And I do think that we are shifting into a time where there is more focus on spirituality and on our intuition and going within. And it's interesting because I know we're going to talk about coronavirus, but I feel like that's part of what we are even being guided to do right now is to go inwards during this time, do healing, meditate. Don't get so pulled into what is in many ways kind of a false reality. I mean, we feel like it's everything, but really what we think of as reality is just a very small part of the bigger picture. And I think when we connect in with our intuition, we're better able to do exactly what you said, which is communicate with each other, receive guided messages, and also see the sort of bigger spiritual truth that's happening.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I do believe that despite the difficulties, and I know a lot of people are struggling because of this whole virus situation, but I believe that despite all of it, there is a much higher good that's going to come out of this, and it's already in process. While we have all been forced to slow down and stay home, you can see it in nature already, the way things are becoming better. And I do believe that on the other side of this is a better world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do hope a lot of people spend this time in introspection and meditation, like you said, because that's what's going to help them through this, right?
Yes.
So, Laura, as a psychic, what kind of messages have you received about the coronavirus situation that the whole world is going through right now?
Yeah, so the interesting thing with things like this is there's so many different levels to look at it. I mean, so you can look at it from a very physical and kind of medical level, which is that, this is a very virulent disease, virulent pathogen that's going around. And that is true. That is very true. It's not untrue if you look at it in a different way. But I think there's other ways to look at it. I was doing a psychic training with a client. And that's one of the things I do is I do readings is actually do training with various people to help them tap into their own abilities. And one of the things that came up in terms of the sort of spiritual reason for coronavirus is that for many people, one of the things that this is serving is to actually help them clear through fear. And I know that may sound strange, but I basically was shown how there's a lot of people that are in fear. And one of the best ways to clear fear is actually to kind of walk through whatever brings you fear. And then you survive and you think, I'm okay. And then the fear is cleared. So I got that that's a lot of what's happening for people. And then I also saw that it's helping for people to understand the importance of the physical, health, their bodies, having awareness of that. Also, connection and creativity that people are going to be pulling within. They're going to be focusing on inner healing. They're going to be creative. And that a lot of the things that I think some people are feeling it's bad or it's dark, these things that are being taken away from people, there's always something beneficial. So I do have so much compassion for what people are going through right now. But I do see that there's a fair amount of parallels with, for example, the recession that we had in this country. And at that time, it just felt like everything was being taken away from me. And then in retrospect, I realized the things that were taken away from me I was so much better without them. I just didn't know it yet. And so I think that's the case for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And, there certainly are people who are passing on.
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to share the message that, crossing over is nothing to be afraid of. And one of the hardest things for people is this fear that dying creates for people. And I have memories of the other side, and I work with the other side regularly through my work. And I just want to provide comfort for people to know that once you pass on, it's this wonderful relief. And it's not anything for us to obviously hurry along before our time, but I don't perceive death to be a bad thing either. And I hope to help alleviate some of the fear around all of this for them.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, that is a message that everyone needs to hear. What you're talking about, passing on and not to be afraid of it. So, you were saying that there are a lot of people around who are ghosts, right? So, what happens when you pass on? Do people just stick around here as ghosts, or do they move on to a different plane? Exactly what happens, and how is it decided who stays here and who doesn't?
Yeah, so actually most people, when they pass on, when their bodies die, their soul crosses over into, the full afterlife, heaven, whatever you'd like to call it, a really wonderful place. And the light opens, which is like a gateway or portal to the other side, and the soul transitions through that portal, and then they're on the other side. But some souls, for whatever reason, maybe they don't feel ready, maybe they're in fear, maybe they just, have something that's happened in their life that they feel like they want to stick around, decide not to, or maybe they don't feel like they can, and they end up becoming what we would call an earthbound spirit or ghost. And that means that their spirit has essentially kind of remained here on the earth plane, but they haven't crossed over and gotten the full knowledge and understanding of why everything happens. Because when you do fully cross over into the light, it's loving, it's wonderful, it's comforting. And you also see the bigger picture. You understand why things happened. You do a sort of life review. And you're also then able to connect with loved ones. And the other thing about ghosts is that, they're no longer really connected here in the same way. So the sense of the passage of time is not the same for them as those of us who are alive in our bodies. And that's why you do get these ghosts sometimes that may have been, from our perspective, around for, hundreds of years or longer sometimes, because they just don't have that same sense of time. So it's a very different energy to connect in with a ghost and with a spirit in the light, because a spirit in the light knows the bigger picture, and they are usually trying to help us, and they have a deeper understanding, whereas a ghost is, I would think of as kind of stuck, and usually the energy of a ghost is not very pleasant for most people. Sometimes they're just all right, but compared to a spirit in the light, it's a much lower vibration or energy.
Okay, so spirit in the light, are they spirits which also guide and help people?
Yes.
So it's like when people call on their ancestors
Yeah.
for help, for guidance, blessings, it would be spirits in the light who
Yes.
would come forward and do the help.
Exactly. So spirits in the light would be, yes, our loved ones who've passed over, ancestors, also even, spirits that, people that were famous people who have crossed over are no longer alive. Those would be spirits in the light as well.
Oh, wow. So much to think of, so much to take in. It's like, I hope more and more people understand this, understand these things, because, like you said, understanding makes you get over your fear. And then you also said the pandemic itself is happening so that people can walk through their fear. And yeah, you see a lot of these movies and series about dystopia and doom and pandemics and world ending and whatnot. And this is kind of like giving people the feel of what that would be. And then I know most of us are gonna come out of this
Mm-hmm.
feeling good and feeling fine, and it is going to give us strength and bravery. So what you said makes absolute sense. Now, have you got any messages from the angels or spirits of light or guides for people on how to handle this, how to come out of this, or a message so that the world in general can avoid going through something like this again?
Sure. I think it is important to understand that when we do go through something, there is always a reason for it, meaning things don't happen randomly. There is some kind of benefit, there is some teaching. And so if we can go within and figure out what that is, that can be very helpful. So in my case, during the recession, it did seem like very much in a lot of ways like I was a victim and everything was just taken away. But then it was all so much better for me. Actually, when it was gone, I just had no idea until it was gone that it wasn't in my interest. So to
Yeah.
go within and ask yourself, what is it that I'm being led to or shown here, on a spiritual level, on a soul level, and then on a physical, kind of material level. I would say there's many things that we can do to help ourselves both physically and spiritually. So in terms of our physical health, I think one of the things this is doing is really bringing to light the importance of our physical bodies and our health. And I feel like as a whole in our modern world, that people really ignore their bodies to a large degree. And one of the things that I've been shown is that there's a lot of people who think they're healthy when they're really not, because in our definition of health, especially in the United States, it basically means not a serious disease. But that doesn't mean that you're really healthy, because if you have a serious disease, you've probably been unhealthy for a long time
Yeah.
before it developed into something serious. So even a lot of the cases where they're saying, oh, this was a healthy person, and I'm getting intuitively that in most cases they really weren't. It just may have been something that wasn't diagnosed yet.
Yeah.
So this is a wake-up call in terms of really paying attention to our bodies, like what are our bodies telling us, our health. And some things that I think everyone can do to help their immunity to feel better and stronger is vitamin C. This is one supplement that's actually they used in China. So they use large quantities of vitamin C. And one of the amazing things about vitamin C is it's very cheap. Almost anyone can have access to that and take that to their benefit. And it's very effective for viruses in general, as well as zinc. So those are a couple of supplements for overall health and specifically clearing pathogens. I'm a huge fan of infrared, saunas or blankets. And another thing that I've recently kind of discovered is colloidal silver is really good for fighting infections. And it's definitely something you want to not take all the time because there can be problems in your body, but certainly during infection time, it's a wonderful thing to do. And then other things that will help both your body and your spirit are meditating, going within, making sure you're resting a lot. I feel like so many people I know are needing a lot more sleep than normal. And I think it's just important to honor that. Like if we need sleep, our body is trying to tell us something. We're either fighting something or maybe we're getting more information on the other side, because when we sleep is actually also when our soul is able to connect and communicate with our loved ones, with our spirit guides, and receive more guidance that helps us in our daily life. So those are all things that all of us can do and that cost very little, or in some cases nothing. And then the other piece is create. A lot of people suddenly now have a lot more time because they can't go to work, they can't go shopping, or they can't do whatever they would normally do. And this is a wonderful time to go within, meditate, get clarity, and also really think about when things kind of get back to normal. What do we want our path or trajectory to be? What do we want to create? Plant those seeds, literally and figuratively for your life right now.
That sounds like very, very simple things that people can do. It's nothing major. All of us have time right now. All of us are sitting at home. Even those who are working from home, they're saving a lot of time on the commute, if nothing else, right? So,
right. And yeah, and you can't go to the store. There's so many things that we can't do now.
yeah, so that gives you time.
Exactly.
It sounds like a simple solution, where people can just sit at home and work on themselves and, like you said, create and meditate and take rest and rejuvenation time for that. I hope everyone who's listening, I know you've been hearing this message again and again from multiple people saying, relax, meditate, self-reflect and whatnot. And I hope this message yet again coming from a person who is a psychic, who is able to have a much stronger intuition and connect to energies that all of us don't have access to. Even from there, this is the message that you're getting. And I do hope all of you are inspired to really step back, slow down, and get over the fear. So, Laura, thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing all the things that you did today. Can you tell everyone where they can find you online, how they can connect with you?
Sure. And one other thing I'm just getting to say before I do that is just for everyone to really be aware of what they're putting their mind, their focus, and their attention to. So focus on the positive things, be aware of and avoid watching news all the time right now, because it's all very scary seeming when you turn on the news.
Oh, yeah.
So just think about it. Like, what am I putting into my mind, my energy field, my body? And we can shift that by just being mindful and paying attention and making choices. And that also that when we worry about something, it's kind of like praying for what we don't want to happen. So it's a very normal thing to do. But at the same time, if we can just start to sort of retrain our brain so that when we're worrying about something, whether it's a loved one passing on or us getting sick or finances or whatever that is, just sort of reframe it and then ask for help with whatever it is you'd like instead. So maybe you'd like abundance instead, or, you'd like to envision health and wellness for the world, whatever that is, just keep, shifting it. And that does make a difference. And then if people want to learn or connect with me, my psychic website is healingpowers.net. So again, that's tied in with my last name, healingpowers.net. And I also have a podcast called Healing Powers Podcast. And I'm on Instagram at Laura Powers 44. And I'm on Facebook at Healing Powers as well.
Cool. We'll put all these links in the show notes so people can easily find it and connect with you. For everyone who's listening, please let us know your thoughts and what you feel about this episode. And if there are any questions at all, feel free to connect and ask. I'm available on Instagram at Veganosaurus, Veganosaurus. And of course, Laura's links are all going to be available in the show notes too. Okay, Laura, thank you so much.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
If you've been enjoying the Feel Good Factor, please rate, review, or subscribe on your preferred podcasting app. Or you can leave a rating and review for each and every episode that you love on podchaser.com. You can find my podcast on Podchaser by going to podchaser.com/Veganosaurus, Veganosaurus. I'll leave the link in the show notes. Currently, during the coronavirus crisis, Podchaser is donating 25 cents to Meals on Wheels for every review that is left on their website. And when I respond to the review, they double their donation. This is a great time. Please do review on podchaser.com so that you're supporting my podcast as well as doing good in the world by helping Podchaser donate to Meals on Wheels. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Feel Good Factor. I'm Susmita Veganosaurus and I'm looking forward to talking to you again very soon. Bye!